in a revolving door.
Hello everyone, I'm Gata the Catgirl here with a new video for you. You may be wondering why Catgirl doesn't really have a girly voice, but it's because I have a cold. Star Wars was always a big part of my childhood. While some kids talked about sports, I talked about why a Gran would look silly as a Mandalorian. It's the 3 protruding eyes stuffed in a helmet. It would look hilarious, trust me. The original trilogy was revolutionary for the movie industry. The prequels were movies, I suppose. And the sequels are definitely different, but I'm willing to see where they go. Either way, Star Wars is a space opera focusing on the forces of good versus evil. But is it actually good versus evil? If I asked you who the good guys were, you'd most likely tell me the Rebel Alliance or the Jedi are obviously the good guys. Let me express why they are not only not the good guys, but they're actually just as antagonistic as the evil Empire and the Sith. Good versus evil? Pfft, more like evil versus evil. While the expanded universe is fun, I'm excluding it since it's no longer considered canon. Thank you, Disney. I'm gonna go strictly based off the movies. To understand the sides, we must look at what exactly they are. The Jedi are a religious order of force-sensitive people of all races and species who serve, study, and use their mystical powers for peace and justice in the Galactic Republic, and to counter their mortal enemy, the Sith. The Jedi are basically Catholic space wizard samurai things, only there's no religious deity involved. They are portrayed as the divinely ordained force of good and wisdom to the galactic politics, but when I see them, I see an awful lot of hypocrisy and unwise decisions. The Jedi believe in balance and tranquility.
When you are calm, at peace, passive.
Except that all they teach is going against human natural order. They're all about suppressing personal desires and denouncing all attachments. They seek out and recruit babies in whom they sense force potential and train them before they can gain any attachments such as families, because that's a bad thing. A real balance would involve some level of moderation as opposed to strict adherence to inhuman living conditions. This is extremism. In Rogue One, we see the dangers of extremism with Saw Gerrera. Whether or not it is for a good cause, it's still dangerous. The Jedi believe in democracy.
My allegiance is to the Republic, to democracy!
Democracy!
Except they don't. They teach the opposite, actually. Democracy is expressed as the freedom of individuality of opinions. But individuality is not important to the Jedi Order. They teach that fear leads to the dark side, yet they utilize fear. Fear of the dark side.
But beware of the dark side. Anger, fear, aggression. The dark side of the Force are they. Easily they flow, quick to join you in a fight. If once you start down the dark path, forever will it dominate your destiny. Consume you it will, as it did Obi-Wan's apprentice.
Vader.
They teach their members that if they don't follow their rules, it could lead you to the dark side. No worldly attachments like loved ones, or you could turn to the dark side. No questioning authority, or you could turn to the dark side. No learning the ways of the Sith. You know, their mortal enemy, that anyone with half intelligence would be trying to learn everything they could in order to fight against them. Or you could turn to the dark side. Even then, Yoda alone seems to speak on behalf of the Jedi Order.
Agree with you, the Council does.
His is the word, and the word is Yoda. The ideal Jedi is a robot, obedient, emotionless, and lacking individual thought. Anything otherwise within the Jedi Order is considered dangerous. The Jedi believe in law and order, except when the Sith are involved. Anakin decapitated Count Dooku, who was unarmed and on his knees, an undeniable sin to the Jedi Order. The worst part is that it was Christopher Lee.
How dare you kill off Christopher Lee?
You can argue that Palpatine convinced Anakin to do it, even though he really just had to say,
Kill him.
once, and that was apparently enough. But Mace Windu, a leading member of the Jedi Council, and exemplar of what the Jedi should be, was more than willing to kill the disarmed Palpatine who was on the ground begging for mercy without a trial. So yes, they support law and order, so long as they aren't completely blinded by their obsession with the Sith, but not obsessed enough to actually learn about them because that could lead to the dark side. With this neglect to galactic law and order by their Sith fetish, they orchestrated a coup against the democratically elected leader to impose their religious views on a secular republic based entirely on allegations of Sith involvement with no evidence. Palpatine never admitted to being a Sith Lord to Anakin. Anakin even says he thinks he is a Sith Lord.
I think Chancellor Palpatine is a Sith Lord.
Did they honestly think killing, or arresting if he was compliant, the Galactic Chancellor would go over well with the Senate? There was no trial, no discussion, no preparation. They barged into his office unannounced, drew their weapons, and said he was under arrest. Even on a centralist and legal perspective, Palpatine was correct in saying that the entire Jedi Order committed treason, and the forced disband of the Jedi was completely justified.
Every single Jedi, including your friend, Obi-Wan Kenobi, is now an enemy of the Republic.
Sure, Palpatine had some scandals, but that would be like the Catholic Church orchestrating a coup against the democratically elected President of the United States to impose their religious views on a secular republic based entirely on allegations of Satanist involvement with no evidence. Whether or not he did have Satanist ties, would that really matter to the public? I'm sure a lot of people would be upset, but a lot would be indifferent due to the fact that it's a secular democracy. Theocracy has little to do with their politics. I'm not going to point any fingers to blame for this nonsense, but I'll just say that it sounds really silly. Lucas.
It's this guy's fault.
At the very least, the Sith are precisely who they profess to be. They say they do something, and that's exactly what they do. They're portrayed as some evil blob of deceit, but they are more honest than the Jedi. I'm not saying that the Sith are the divinely ordained force of good and wisdom simply because the Jedi are not. My point is that the Jedi are not necessarily the good guys either. The Jedi, through rash, hypocritical, and unwise action, caused their own destruction. Anakin Skywalker seemed to be the only Jedi to notice this and took the side that the Jedi initially swore to protect, the Republic, which in this case was Palpatine himself. While the Jedi were blinded by their enmity towards their 1,000-year-old rivaling order, they held violence over maintaining galactic unity. It was because of this act where Palpatine proposed a Senate vote to convert the Republic into an empire, to ensure security and stability, which the Jedi were supposedly offering to the Republic. Now, the fact that it was an empire does not mean that it was harsh or unreasonable. It had its own Imperial Senate, and was basically the exact same establishment as the Republic. The biggest difference is that Palpatine had more influence now. Jonathan V. Last said it well in the Weekly Standard when he said,
"Make no mistake, as Emperor, Palpatine is a dictator, but a relatively benign one. It's a dictator people can do business with. They collect taxes and patrol the skies. They try to stop organized crime in the form of smuggling rings run by the Hutts."
You can also add domestic disturbances such as violent political rebels or terrorists to that. The Rebel Alliance was founded in secret with the only goal of overthrowing the government by any means necessary. But why? What is it that the Empire is doing to generate such a defiant resistance? Jonathan V. Last continued by saying,
The Empire is not committing random acts of terror. It is engaged in a fight for the survival of its regime against a violent group of rebels who are committed to its destruction.
They aren't hurting civilians, they aren't at war with a neighboring galaxy, they aren't killing babies. Well, I mean, Anakin killed babies, but that's kind of his own category there. Their only enemies are from domestic crime. So the rebels seem to have no real foundation to their intention. The entire story of the original trilogy tells us how terrible the rebels actually are. It centers on a band of terrorists in an attempt to destroy seemingly the only organized government, since the entire conflict started because Leia, the daughter of one of the terrorist organization founders and spy posing as Imperial Senator, who was posing as an Imperial ambassador, stole the plans to the Imperial fortress in an attempt to kill them all, thus single-handedly starting a galactic war. Instead of simply bombarding them and destroying any chance that the plans could get into the wrong hands, the Empire instead sent in specialist troops led by General Vader himself. Before apprehension, Leia loaded the plans on a droid and sent it in an escape pod. The Empire had every right to destroy them all if they really wanted to. Once the lowly desert peasant and farm boy named Luke buys the stolen droid with the confidential information, which he had every reason to suspect were stolen, by the way, he meets one of those old Catholic space wizard samurai things named Kenobi, a terrorist sympathizer. living in the desert who makes a point in suspiciously following Luke around his entire life, with a past history of treasonous crimes against the Emperor. This crazy old hermit teaches Luke a dead religious cult's practice designed to massacre people in hopes of turning Luke into a weapon. They find some fellow outlaws and make a violent scene in a cantina before they go to the fortress to free the criminal Leia. Luckily, the Empire planned ahead and led them to believe they broke out, when in actuality, the Empire allowed them to escape with a tracking device planted on their ship. While Darth Vader managed to take out the threatening Kenobi, now that the escaped criminals were free, and the main terrorist base of Bail Organa, Leia's father, was decimated, they foolishly went to their new terrorist base. With the new location available to the Empire makes their move to stop them before they can cause any more damage to galactic law. Sorry guys, I'm gonna have to cut it off here. It's getting a little long, so I'm gonna make a two-parter. Hope you enjoyed it so far, and hope we can enjoy it again. Jeez, these outros are so awkward. I really don't know what else to say. Have a good day. I hope it's going good.